Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to day 4 and session number 10 of the AMBA and BGA Business School Leaders Forum, brought to you by GoToWebinar by LogMeIn. For those of you that don't know me, I'm David Woods-Hale, Director of Marketing and Communications at AMBA and BGA. And for this session, I'm delighted to be joined by Scott Miller and Fabien Miard from Keystone Academic Solutions, who will be talking us through strategies to adapt your student recruitment in a post-COVID world. I'll let Scott and Fabien introduce themselves in a second, but just before we start, if you haven't joined one of these sessions before, we want the sessions to be as interactive as possible. So there's going to be some polls during the session, and I'll let you know when those are coming up, just so you can take part. And also, we've got a question box where you can ask some questions and put forward some comments as well. So just pop them into the little box in your control panel, and I'll try and get through as many as I can towards the end of the session. If we do run out of time, don't worry, because we'll be able to pass these on to the speakers, who will be able to get in touch with you directly and answer any queries you might have. Also during the session, please feel free to share your thoughts and musings on the social channel of your choice using the hashtag BSLF. I'll be in the line throughout the webinar. If you've got any queries or want to run anything past me, just pop them in the Q&A box and I'll come straight back to you. I'll also put some useful pieces of information as to how you can make the most out of the forum throughout the session, as well as some useful links, so just keep an eye out for those. So without further ado, I will pass over to Scott and Fabien to start the presentation.
Good afternoon. As David mentioned, we will be speaking today about strategies to adapt your MBA student recruitment in a post-COVID-19 world. As an introduction, my name is Scott Miller, and we're here with my colleague Fabien Miard, and we work at Keystone Academic Solutions. Fabien and I have both been working in the higher education industry for over a decade now, and these are in fact very interesting times. I think we could all agree. Today we're here to share with you a few insights that come from our customers, the higher education institutions that we work with all over the world, as well as insights from our student users. Okay. Are you able to see my slides?
Yes,
yeah?
Yes, we absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, so today's session, we will share with you results from a student poll that we ran on our mbastudies.com website. We're also going to cover best practices for communication strategies to help you make your MBA stand out to interested prospective students. We'll also share some information we've gathered on Generation Z and some information about marketing automation for higher education. So obviously there has been major uncertainty in the market since March of this year from the pandemic, and we've collected insights from industry key players to try and explain how the situation looks today. Okay, so just to set the scene a little bit, the Pulse Point survey of college and university presidents on COVID-19 from the American Council on Education indicated that 96% of college presidents are concerned about fall enrollment in the USA for 2020. And there also have been tuition refunds from MBA students at institutions such as Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and many, many more, according to the Financial Times. Now, GMAC ran a survey in April of this year on their MBA.com website that shows that students are considering delaying their studies in 2020. And looking at the graph here, we can see that their initial reaction was strong, demonstrated by a rapid increase in the consideration to delay studies. Now, this tendency to delay studies did stabilize as we went into April, and it has continued to stabilize since then. We found from this GMAC survey that prospective MBA students did seem to be more likely to consider delaying the pursuit of their studies if you compare them to prospective business master's students. The same survey from GMAC showed job market concerns amongst prospective students. The concerns grew during the initial weeks of COVID-19 in the same weeks in March. And the uncertainty of COVID-19 on the global economy is obviously causing concern for prospective MBA students fearful about the job market. On a positive note, we are seeing that concerns are settling down and aspirations for MBAs appear to be stabilizing after much uncertainty in March when the pandemic was felt in many countries. So now let's look at the results from a student poll that we ran ourselves on our MBAstudies.com websites during the last 2 weeks. So this is very fresh data coming from our MBAstudies.com website and from our student users on that site. This website is used for prospective students who are looking to take an MBA program. The typical student that is on our MBAstudies.com website is looking to enroll in an MBA in the coming few months. So the results that we have are from 450 respondents from over 90 countries. And as I mentioned, the survey was ran during the past 2 weeks. The participants ranged in age from 25 to 39 years old. And 40% of the students that we polled were considering delaying their MBA due to COVID-19. We also gathered data on how they would prefer to complete their MBA, and 46% of the respondents said that they would prefer to complete their MBA. 47% said they would prefer to complete their MBA online, in an online delivery mode. 30% said they would prefer a campus-based program, and 23% indicated that they would prefer flexible or combined delivery of their MBA. There has been a big rise in the demand for online delivery of MBA programs, and this goes together with the trends that we've been seeing lately across all of our websites and verticals with students. So there is a general increase of interest for online delivery of programs. We also asked these same prospective students the top factors that they considered when looking at MBA programs. And the number one factor for them was the perceived quality of education. 31% of student respondents indicated that this was the most important. Number two was earning potential and career prospects after they completed their MBA degree. The price of the MBA was number three. Reputation of the business school, flexible learning options, and location were the top 6 factors when considering an MBA from the students that we polled on our MBAstudies.com website. We also asked these students if they were considering an MBA prior to COVID-19, and 23% of the respondents stated that they started actually considering an MBA after COVID-19 started. So there is a significant increase in interest in MBA programs since March. So this is kind of a silver lining that we found from the poll that we ran with our student users. We asked these users why they were considering taking an MBA after COVID-19, and 47% of them cited professional networking opportunities as the main motivation behind starting an MBA. After professional networking, as our motivation for taking an MBA since COVID-19, the second of these motivations was to differentiate themselves in the job market, the lack of security in the job market, and lastly, the recent spike in unemployment rates was a motivation for pursuing an MBA degree. So after speaking with several of our partners and researching topics for our content strategy, we have put together a list of commonly implemented strategies and actions that will help with your MBA recruitment over the next few months and well into the future after the pandemic has ended. So these are just a few short-term initiatives on recruitment that we'd like to recommend. So taking spending extra attention on international students and providing support and communication to them. Preparing an additional layer of communication to keep up to date during the pandemic is very important to students. Offering flexibility is also very important to interested students. We recommend having options in place for students who may not get their visas on time, perhaps offering online study options to defer to a future semester are also different flexibility options that can be given. Increased training for academic staff as well is very important. Switching from classroom teaching to online delivery can be tricky, especially when full-time. So by providing training opportunities, you can help your educators adapt, allowing them to focus on teaching. And evaluating and improving infrastructure for digital learning. Many digital solutions being used prior to COVID may not have the bandwidth for full-time online use. So now is the time to consider if your solutions are a viable solution on a long-term basis. So the next slide focuses on short-term initiatives that can be taken in the classroom. Creating virtual learning experiences. So putting in extra effort into creating opportunities for interaction and engagement from the class. There's a great company out of Norway called Kahoot. They offer live quizzes, and that is something that can be implemented for the classes. Also creating online events for students, especially in the beginning of a semester. Also ensuring mandatory attendance for key events to boost networking among new students. Really start building the bridges now for those students that will start in the program. Bring the outside world in, invite prominent alumni and guest speakers to give talks and share business cases online is a really good idea to bring into the program, and also to include real life business examples from the pandemic into the curriculum. I think there's a large variety of examples that we can, real life examples that we can bring into curriculums now and integrate into lectures and coursework. So these are some of the initiatives that our customers have been implementing, and we wanted to share that with you today. Other short-term initiatives, nurturing current applications, hosting webinars just like this one about upcoming intakes is an important initiative that can be put into practice. Facilitate deferment to next semester intake if students need that flexibility. Setting up a help desk for visa-related questions, and also assisting students, maybe providing some extra assistance with the visa procedure nowadays. All right, I am going to hand over the presentation to my colleague, Fabien, who will talk about communication strategies.
Hi, everyone. Yes, so the way that we communicate with students is quite important to make an MBA stand out. And a large portion of today's MBA students are millennials. We have by now adapted our communication strategies pretty well to this group of people. But what's interesting is that now Generation Z is approaching and will keep MBA admissions busy in the next decade or two. The two generations, they share similarities, for example, in how good they are at using technology. But there are important differences which can be useful to know, and especially in marketing and communications. So who are the millennials? As most of you probably know, you probably are a millennial yourself, wouldn't surprise me. So they're born between 1980 and 1994, approximately 26 to 40 years old, and probably the biggest group of MBA students today. Millennials are known to respond to many promotional strategies, including traditional advertising, but also to digital and social media marketing. And for this session today, we polled prospective MBA students on mbastudies.com, which is a website that we own, to obtain some insights on their current communication preferences. Now, communicating with millennials, more than half of the students that we polled on mbastudies.com were indeed millennials. As you can see, they were between 25 and 39 years old. But you can also see there's already a group of Gen Z emerging. 14% were already in that group. So it's mostly millennials at the moment. And the overall preference when it comes to communication is clearly, as you can see on the next slide, is clearly email. Over 60% answered that they wanted to be contacted by the institution by email. But we have also a few other channels. As you can see on the next slide, they're less popular. You can see texting and other types of messengers, and other social media channels were about at the same level. And less popular seem to be in-person meetings and calling. Now, another interesting finding on the next slide is that students seem to, or prospective students seem to expect to be responded to very quickly, within 24 hours. And this is a trend that we've seen for some years now, is that this is expected by a lot of prospective students when they contact a university or a business school. It's a challenge for many of our partners in higher education to be able to deliver on that. But fortunately, there are tools available to facilitate this type of response time. And at Keystone, we have also introduced such tools to help business schools and universities to be able to respond quickly and also save time on the manual work that may involve. Now, let's meet Generation Z, the new kid on the block, in a sense. Born after the mid-90s, following the millennials. They are the first true digital natives. They're born into a tech world. And the oldest group among the Gen Zers are now nearing 25 years of age. So it becomes an interesting demographic for business education, especially. They're entering postgraduate business programs and the MBA market in the coming years. Gen Zers, they're a little bit different to previous generations. For example, they are said to have an attention span of about 8 seconds, as opposed to millennials who had apparently 12 seconds. And an interesting trait is that they're very focused on instant gratification, especially when communicating with institutions and businesses. So they prefer concise, bite-sized communication. Social media and messaging are their preferred methods of communication. Authenticity and realness are really important to them, which, for example, explains also why influencer marketing is such a big deal with Gen Z. It's related to that. The good news with this situation at the moment is that a lot of the adaptations that institutions are making during this pandemic can help to prepare for the future arrival of Gen Z. As digital natives, they are likely to want to have more flexible study mode with elements of online. Now, we were interested to verify the communication preferences by asking the Gen Zers and the Millennials directly on our websites. And we'll see the comparison coming up next. So the top 3 for Gen Z on the left and the top 3 for the Millennials on the right. You can see there is a shift to Instagram, a channel that is very much associated with authenticity and realness. You'll see also that YouTube is also in the top 3 for the Gen Zers. There's a clear trend with video. and it's also, for example, related to influencer marketing. I find that personally interesting. I'm actually still one of the last Gen X, so maybe one of the first millennials, depending on where you want to put me. And I have a clear preference of written over video, but I can see that there's a lot of video coming and a lot of channels, also news channels, and that's what Gen Z responds to really well. Facebook remains in the top 3, but is less prominent and perhaps used more as a secondary research tool for the Gen Zers. The takeaway for you is that you are catering to 2 different generations in the coming years, and you'll need 2 different communication strategies depending on which audience you're talking to. Now, if we move on to the next slide. Now, what can you do to cater to both generations? We have some insights. So one is that you stay in touch and nurture and retarget the prospective students. Communicate what makes you stand out. Focus on, for example, on your student community, your teaching staff, or perhaps a unique study program. Definitely incorporate video with the Gen Zers in particular. Send short video messages from your admissions team or on campus. And think about how regularly do you update your YouTube channel? Do you even have a YouTube channel? Be active on social media. Encourage current students to share experiences on social media, study experiences from home, virtual classes, and also try to facilitate so-called Ask a Student channels. There are great services for that out there, and you might know UniBuddy. That's a really good service to do exactly that, also at scale. Now, consider also new channels. Have you heard of TikTok? If you haven't, speak to any teenager, they'll tell you all about it. It's a very popular social media channel that's increasing, growing very, very fast. So keep your ears and eyes open for social media channels that emerge. And there are also some regional differences. Not everything is American, US-based social media. You'll see also some differences there. So it's good to do good market research and to use those channels where relevant. Give prospective students the chance to join an online class as a guest and invest in the virtual student experience. For example, you can create a virtual open day and include online events in that. A lot of our partner schools are doing a lot of these things, and there's a lot to learn and to improve and introduce to make a program stand out. Now, when it comes to a communication plan, you'll see on the next slide, it's a lot about the what, where, and how, and also the question of automation. When it comes to the what, it's important to sell the experience of the MBA, not the MBA itself. Inspire the students by creating value-based stories. Use prominent or interesting alumni in marketing campaigns to tell your story. This will help you, especially with Gen Zers, to resonate with them. They crave authenticity, and this is a good way to do it. The where, part of it should be definitely your website. This is the window into your business school. Set up story hubs, landing pages that are specific to marketing campaigns. Social media, Instagram and YouTube for Gen Z, LinkedIn and Facebook for millennials. We use LinkedIn a lot also at Keystone. It's a very easy channel to get a lot of impact, especially with networks. Host webinars on relevant topics and do segmented direct email marketing. You can also host events for prospective students, for example, a student for a day event. How? I mentioned it earlier, what students want to be responded to quickly, so make sure that students receive an answer in a timely manner. Use video content as much as you can with Gen Z especially. Virtual campus tours are popular when physical is not available. like in these times. And you can also try to offer multilingual communication. At Keystone, we, for example, have quite a bit of activity also with French and Spanish, and it's giving us good results. You can also automate some of your communication to improve the responsiveness. That's a really interesting aspect, automation. It does not have to be tricky or difficult to use, even for small teams. It can definitely save you hours of work every week. And it can help you to be responsive without having enormous resources, for example, with staff. So it helps you scale. Now, simple ways to automate with with automatic email responses. You'll be fast and you'll be able to meet the demands of the younger demographics. You may recall the Gen Zers instant gratification and element and the short attention span. You can definitely address that. And also automatic emails will make you independent from time zones, which is relevant in international student marketing and admissions. You can do email nurturing with software, for example, creating email flows that can be used for common types within your audience. For example, an email flow for students from a certain country or region, and so on. And you can use drip campaigns, which is a really easy way to keep students engaged, and it saves you time because it's automatic. You can also do automatic personalization. Sounds almost like a paradox, but it's basically using tags. It's a simple way to make it personal. I can give you an example that let's say Tom applies for a master in business. With tags, you can address him as Dear Tom instead of hello, and you can automatically load content such as deadlines, requirements, curriculum, and so on for the master in business that Tom has shown interest in. And it makes you appear less generic, but behind the scenes, the heavy lifting is done by a software for you. And at Keystone, we work extensively with tags to provide institutions with automated and personalized student communication. Finally, lead scoring is also an interesting area that can help a lot. It can help you to, especially when you have a lot of students contacting you or prospective students contacting you, it helps you to contact the most engaged ones. And also you can filter and sort them and focus on the ones that perhaps have the right profile, maybe the right kind of or amount of work experience. They're from the right kind of regions where you have a focus, the right age, education level, and so on. So automation is actually simple, and it will help you save time. It will increase student engagement. It will help you to prioritize the most suitable students, and it will improve the student experience early on and throughout the journey towards becoming an enrolled student at your institution.
So all that remains to be said is thank you so much once again, Scott and Fabien, for taking the time to speak to us today and for sharing so much insight and practical advice. And I look forward to seeing everyone hopefully tomorrow at another session in the forum. Thank you very much.
For more information and the Q&A part of this webinar, please download the PDF.